Matthew Moore's Wood Studio. It's Thursday, May 12th for just a few more minutes, which means it's time for another weekly shop update. So what's been going on in the shop this week? Well, a lot. Let's get into it. So the first thing you can see if I walk out of the screen is that the posts and the trestle itself is all fit very nicely. There's still a lot of work left to do, cutting the space for the wedges, shaping the actual trestle itself, but this is a really big step. So last week I showed you guys how I cut the mortises for these really large posts. Again, these are 3 inches tall, 2 5/8 of an inch deep or thick, and then 1 1/4 inches wide. And I had to cut matching tenons as well that protrude 5/8 of an inch from the outside wall of the post. So let's get into how I did that. The first thing I did was I headed over to the bandsaw and I removed some material from this trestle and I let it sit overnight. The next day I came back and I milled up the trestle itself, both to thickness and height, and I used my planer to mill up the height as well instead of cutting this at the table saw. The actual piece itself is 2 inches thick, so that 2 inches wide, when it stood up on end, is more than wide enough to support itself while it's going through the planer. And that's what I did to get it to its final dimension of 5 inches in height. From there, I cut this guy to length at the table saw, and then at the table saw, using my fence, making sure that it is square to the table saw itself, cut the shoulders for my tenons. From there I use my box cutting set, which gives me a much cleaner cut than my dado set, and I cut the tenons on this just a little bit thicker, both in width and height, than what my mortises are. And from there I went over to the bench and, using my rabbet block plane, started first with the height of the mortises to match the height of the tenons. So I brought the tenons down to the height of the mortises. And once those were matched, then I was able to work on the actual thickness of the tenons. Now what we're looking for here is a fit height-wise that is extremely snug. So we want nice fitting joints height-wise. But what we don't want is a nice fitting joint along the width. Instead, what we want is a few thousandths of an inch of space or gap on either side. And the reason for that is we're going to put wedges into the tenons that will spread the tenons out just a little bit and lock everything in. Remember, this is a trestle table, and trestle tables are meant to be taken apart. And this joinery here, all of this, none of this will be permanent. You know what I mean. So once that wedge goes in, it's going to lock in. It'll also allow for expansion and contraction over the seasons. So you can also lock this joint if everything is getting bigger or smaller later on, or different times of the year. So that was the big thing this week here in the shop itself. So that's pretty much it for the shop this week. There's a whole bunch of woodworking here, and I hope you guys did a whole bunch of woodworking in your shops as well. So question of the week. So my question of the week for you guys is this: how would you have approached cutting the tenons for this type of work, this large tenon here? Would you cut it differently? Did you cut a normal tenon? Let me know, I'm really interested. Leave that in the comments below. So as always, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and hit that thumbs up button if you like this video. If you're watching this on Facebook, hit the like button, share your timeline, and head over to the Wood Studio page and like us there as well. And as always, have a great week in the shop.